Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
The Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 514 for the 26th of August, 2018. Richard Saunders here with you from at last, a rainy Sydney, Australia. Coming up on this week's show, a special interview with Stephen Barrett, MD, one of the people behind Quackwatch. Quackwatch, a wonderful resource for skeptics and, non-skeptics alike, I guess, covering no end of quackery from acupuncture to homeopathy, all the classics. All the classics are there in detail. A wonderful website. I'll be speaking to Stephen Barrett about why he put that together and some of his other concerns. Coming up at the top of the show, Stephen Barrett, MD, from Quackwatch. And I must say a big thank you to Jeff Gelbach, who helped me arrange this interview with Stephen Barrett. Following that, part 2 of Speed Meet the Scientists. Here in Sydney, a couple of weeks ago at the Powerhouse Museum, they had a wonderful open to the public evening, with a room full of scientists, and I was running around with my microphone, meeting as many as possible. Part 2 this week, and part 3 next week. Coming up on this week's segment of Speed Meet the Scientists, we're going to be learning about hitchhiking crustaceans, decomposing bodies, and fecal matter. Yeah. And I'm sure you'll agree with me that the young scientists I'm speaking to are certainly inspiring and interesting. After that, news of the Wallaby. No, not the Australian Rugby Union team. Oh dear, they were thrashed by the All Blacks just last night. No, the Wallaby Award from the Australian Skeptics for Journalism. It's a new award. We're going to be presenting this at the convention this year. Find out what the Wallaby is all about a bit later on in the show. Then to round up the show, it's Maynard back at the Australian Museum with part 3 of his Meeting the Scientists. Tonight he speaks to various people, including Ruben the surfing scientist, and also meets a goanna. Yes, a goanna. Who was very big, but very nice. Joanna the goanna. Now, before we get stuck into the show, a little reminder about the upcoming convention. I know I've been reminding you a lot about the upcoming convention, but I'd like to tell you about the Friday evening welcome event, and this will be on the 12th of October at the Occidental Hotel, which is in Wynyard, Sydney. Now, Sydney listeners who come to Skeptics in the Pub will know this pub very well every month, and listeners to the show will know. Of course, we have Maynard doing interviews from Skeptics in the Pub every month. Normally, we're on either of one or two levels of this pub. Well, this event, the Friday evening welcome event, we're going to be taking over 2 levels. One level will be for those who'd like to have a sit-down meal and chat to other skeptics and take part in a trivia night. Now, some months ago, we had a skeptical trivia night at Skeptics in the Pub, which was a great success. Well, this time it's a general trivia night. So, a great opportunity to meet and mingle with other skeptics and enjoy some trivia. And this event is free. Absolutely free. Please come along. Friday the 12th from 6 p.m. at the Occidental Hotel. And if you'd like to come along, just RSVP at skeptics.com.au/event/national-convention, or just click the link in this week's show notes. And that page will also give you the opportunity to buy your normal convention tickets and the dinner, the gala 3-course dinner on the 13th of October, including beverages, oh yes. And we'll have entertainment and the Skeptics Awards. Well, I'm looking forward to all of that. And joining us for the trivia night will be presenters Lara Benham and Maynard. But now it's time for me to run downstairs, run into the cupboard. Well, open the door, run downstairs, run into the cupboard. I wonder where those cats are. They were on the promotion this week, and I thought they'd be here. It's time for me to run downstairs, making sure I don't trip over the cats. Have some butterscotch pudding this week. Thank you, Trish. Come back upstairs and bring you the Skeptic Zone. Joining me now, all the way from beautiful North Carolina, is a man I'd wanted to chat to for a very long time. It's the one of the people behind the incredibly useful and successful Quackwatch website, Stephen Barrett, MD. Hello, Stephen.
Hi, Richard.
Really nice to talk with you. I've been advising my listeners for over 10 years now, or about 10 years, about Quackwatch and suggesting that they go there and running little promotions for it. It's nice to talk to someone behind Quackwatch. First of all, for the benefit of our listeners, what's your background?
I'm a retired psychiatrist. That is, I went to medical school and then took specialty training in psychiatry. I practiced for a total of 35 years. But in the late 1960s, I got interested in the field of misinformation and deception, anything to do with that. And my interest gradually grew to the point where in the mid-1970s, I started cutting down my psychiatric time and began investigating. I soon found that the media were not particularly interested in what I was finding, so I decided that in order to have a good outlet for what I was learning, I would have to do some writing myself. And so I learned how to write, became a writer, and hooked up with a very interested publisher, put out a lot of books, and began to get noticed. Had quite a bit of influence, I think, during the 1980s. I had made a lot of talk show appearances and had articles published here and there. And then when the Internet came along, it was very interesting for me because it used to take months to do an investigation, and now sometimes you can do an investigation in a couple of hours. So
right.
I greatly expanded what I look at. And, of course, the reach is enormous.
It truly is, and I must say that, and I'm sure my listeners know who have visited Quackwatch, the website itself and how it's grown, but the site itself is an enormous resource for quackery and looking into this sort of thing. Just looking down the list of topics mentioned, it is extensive. And I've visited this site quite regularly. Features about acupuncture to chiropractic to all sorts of things, Chinese medicine. It just goes on and on and on. And really, you have to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. There's so many items there. But it says right at the top, one of the points that makes out is this site is a network, isn't it? It's a network of people.
Yes, well, it's not a formal network. I get mail from people all over the world every day. I used to get things in my physical mailbox. Now I get emails saying, "Hey, would you look at this?" Or "I wrote that. Could you share it? Could you write about it? Could you investigate? Hey, I read something about that you wrote, and here's some more information." So basically, every page is really potentially a living article where people can send new information, and they could also correct me. One of the nice things about the Internet is that if you happen to say something wrong, you can be corrected and you can be updated. And it's just great because it contributes to accuracy.
You're absolutely right. And, of course, this is an underpinning of the scientific method. But I guess in your case particularly, it can be an interesting bit of a quagmire because not only will people write in periodically to correct you, which is a good thing with new and better information, but I imagine you would get your fair share of people wanting to correct you to their point of view. In other words, attacking some of the articles on your website. You must get lots of emails like that.
The mail is probably more positive than the emails are more positive than negative. I don't actually get a tremendous amount of criticisms or nasty mail. I'm not sure why that is. Now, I don't have a bulletin board. On many websites, people can post information. I couldn't possibly do that because then I would get a tremendous amount of hate messages. I know that would happen. And I don't need that. I wouldn't even have time to read them all.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You wouldn't, because, I know even here at the Skeptic Zone podcast, I'll get people writing in accusing me of being nothing more than a shill for big pharmaceutical companies or whatever the case may be. So I'm glad that most of your feedback is positive. That's a very encouraging sign. And one of the more interesting segments on your website, I find, is the 26 ways you've written to spot quackery. And that must have come about after years of looking into quackery.
Well, actually, it was developed by Victor Herbert, who was one of the main people fighting quackery in the 1970s. He had a lot of ideas, and I met him in the early 1970s, and we worked out the article together. Since that time, I've only added a few, actually. He really did a comprehensive job, and as I say, I added a few things. So, but we have others. We have probably at least 30 or 40 other things that can make you suspicious, and again, those were developed gradually. But the basic information really hasn't changed that much. The basic idea is to try to undermine your credibility. And I just love the one about how people conclude that they just absolutely know that I'm in the pocket of drug companies or I'm this with drug companies and that with drug companies. I just love to hear that. How do they know? They seem so certain, because in their mind, if you attack my ideas, you're part of an enemy. And the fact is, with me and drug companies, I'm no friend to drug companies. I appreciate the fact that they make good drugs, but I'm very concerned about their economic practices. I'm part of a team in the United States that's trying very hard to press to lower drug prices. I think the prices of many drugs are just absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I can't help that just glancing right now as we're speaking, I'm glancing across this page, the 26 ways to spot quackery, and I certainly recommend this page specifically to our listeners. And we'd look at things as what we might call red flags. They claim that natural vitamins are better than synthetic vitamins. There's another red flag is people who go on about fluoride and things like that. So I think this is a great grounding, Stephen, for people interested in this, maybe new to skepticism or wanting to do research. It's a great way to start. But again, folks, I just keep saying the site itself is extensive. Many hours and years, of course, of work goes into that. But tell me, Stephen, in your opinion, of all the quackery, all the quacks out there, what do you think is the most urgent or one of the most pressing for us to look at?
There's really no answer to that, because what you have is huge numbers of people are being misled to make small mistakes, and smaller numbers of people are being misled to make very big and sometimes very dangerous mistakes. And so which is more important? I don't concern myself with that. I write about what's convenient for me to write about. If I get some good information, I don't care if it's an obscure problem or not. If I can write something about it because I have the information, then that becomes a priority. But there are certain things that really concern me. If we get away from what's most to what's the biggest problem, to things that concern me. One thing in particular just annoys me, and that is the huge market in quack devices that supposedly can figure out what's wrong with you and recommend what you should do about it. What bothers me is that the government agencies don't seem to think that there's any reason to do any kind of systematic regulation. There have been maybe 30 or so regulatory actions throughout the world toward these kinds of fake diagnostic devices. But nobody seems to want to do anything systematic. And I've complained to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for 30 years about one particular type of device, and they don't seem to care. And I don't understand it, and it annoys me greatly because there are tens of thousands of these devices in use in the United States, and probably at least that many throughout the civilized world. You put your hand on these. Most of the devices are electrical things like galvanometers, and supposedly can pick up some kind of body energy and translate that into problems throughout the body and what you ought to do about it. Just absolute, complete craziness, and yet the machines are there. Occasionally, the FDA actually allows them to be sold, and the enforcement is very weak.
I hear you, because here in Australia, I've come across one myself, and the Australian skeptics have seen this one. It's called the Metatron. I don't know if you've heard about the Metatron, non-linear scanning, or NLS scanning. It's a device which is it's on a laptop computer. You put on a pair of headphones, and apparently this program will send waveforms through your body which will read your organs and display them on the screen and offer you health advice after that, down to the level of DNA. It's quite something.
Well, if you can get me an article, I'll be happy to put it on my Device Watch website. By the way, I run approximately 22 or 23 sites. I like to have long indexes. I like to have lists of people that people can look at. That's why my home pages have so many different topics. When people come, I don't know if they know what to look for, so I want them to be able to look at a list. So when I get lots of articles on a particular topic, I start another website, and I've been doing that. I think I'm finished, but I think it's 23 sites, and many of them specialize in one kind of topic or another. But if you can, I can certainly mention that if you email me, or if you have an article I can post, I'll be very happy to post it. But stop and think for a moment. How can people believe that? The simplest line of logic would be, if the device worked, it would be making headlines everywhere, and whoever invented it would get the Nobel Prize. And it doesn't happen. So, reasoning backwards, it doesn't work. And to me, that's just simple logic.
Well, I can't help but agree, but I would say to you, when I've seen this in operation at various mind, body, spirit festivals and such like, it looks sciencey. And to the average person in the street who comes in and does not have a science or medical background, and they're told it works, they're hooked up to this thing, and they can see their internal organs, really, they don't question it, and they very happily hand over their money. But thank you for the offer. I shall certainly send you the information I have on this device, and maybe it can end up on your website.
I certainly can link, if nothing else. Yeah, sure.
Well, Stephen, what a pleasure it's been to chat with you. Again, I've been promoting Quackwatch now for many years on the Skeptic Zone podcast. Folks, the website is quackwatch.org. I sincerely recommend it for seasoned skeptics or people who are new to skepticism. Any medical doctors out there, this should be a regular thing for you to visit as well. Well, Stephen Barrett, all the way from beautiful North Carolina, many, many thanks for your time on the Skeptic Zone.
Quite welcome. By the way, I should mention that I also have a free weekly newsletter, which some people may find interesting.
Folks, there's the clue. Head over to quackwatch.org and sign up. Again, Stephen, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Sweet cappuccino. Soy latte.
Hey, Richard.
Oh, hi, Trish. Hi. Would you like a coffee?
Yeah, thanks. What are you working on?
I'm trying to come up with a new promo to play on the Skeptic Zone.
Who's it for?
The Good Thinking Society in the UK. You know, the...
Oh, yeah, I know them. The guys who recently chased the homeopaths out of the UK public health system.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they campaigned and lobbied government for a while, and now you cannot get homeopathy on the NHS. So they can now spend public money on healthcare that works.
Oh, right. Look, I'll mention that in the promo. Now, their website is goodthinkingsociety.org.
And that website is a good resource for learning more about quackery.
Ah, thanks, Trish. That gives me something good to think about. And now we bring you part 2 of Speed Meet the Scientists, held at the Powerhouse Museum here in Sydney during Science Week 2018. I've come to the next table along here. Who do we have here?
My name is Dr. Hayley Green. I'm from Western Sydney University. My area of research is in forensic anthropology. Basically what we do is look at the body after death, particularly skeletons or parts of skeletons that are discovered, and we look at the clues in the bones to create a profile to help investigators as a starting point, so we can look at features that might determine sex of an individual, so whether they're male or female, roughly how old they were at the time of death, potentially ancestry, so their ancestral background just from their skeletal remains. So part of my research is looking at newly dead, so bodies in various stages of decomposition, to look at time since death analysis, and then use the skeletonized remains for more of an identification or assisting with identification.
What a fascinating area, and of course a great help to police, amongst other things. And from my very limited knowledge on this area, I believe that things like insects are very important, and you can judge things on the development of larvae and things like that.
Yeah, that's correct. So that's called forensic entomology. So we do have some very high-profile entomologists in New South Wales in particular. You're looking at the various larval stages and what they call succession. So when the adults come and lay their eggs, and how it's going to be very graphic, the maggots, the larvae, digest the remains, and they can use those growth patterns to sort of determine how long the bodies have been there. So that's really useful for the first couple of weeks after death. So looking at weeks to up to a month, depending on the season, for post-mortem interval.
And I suppose you would then have the situation where there are very long dead remains.
Yeah, so what we call fully skeletonized. So you're looking at dry remains, so no more soft tissue left on the bones. They may be bleached or weathered because they've been exposed to the environment. And so, yeah, they're the ones that I mainly focus on.
Wow, that's just absolutely fascinating.
Thank you.
And some might say it's not a pleasant area, but it's a necessary one.
Well, I think so, but I'm probably one of the few that I enjoy that work. I find it not pleasant, but rewarding.
Rewarding.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like I'm doing something useful.
Well, that's absolutely fascinating, and we can find out more about what you do online?
Yeah, so I have a Twitter account, and you can just Google my name, Dr. Hayley Green, Western Sydney University. They have a staff profile with research interests on that profile as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
And the evening is going on here, folks. There are more and more people drifting in to meet all the scientists here, and I've come to another table. Hello, who do we have here?
Dr. Katherine Dafforn from Macquarie University.
And what's your area?
I work mainly in marine systems, and I'm an ecologist, ecotoxicologist, looking at human impacts in marine environment.
Well, I guess around Sydney that would be a big an area of research. Are you focused on the Sydney area or more widely than that?
I've worked a lot in the Sydney region, but also up and down the New South Wales coast. But certainly wherever there's an urban settlement, you get the associated impacts of human activities.
Yeah. Well, up and down the New South Wales coast, do you mean?
Yeah, there's several large cities that I've worked around the harbours in. So, yeah, places like Newcastle and Port Kembla. The kinds of impacts I'm looking at are stormwater runoff and invasive species, the kinds of things that arrive on boats, and you just don't get as much of that in the smaller hubs.
Oh, no, fair enough. Now, I can totally understand. So things do arrive on boats, unwelcome things.
Absolutely. We have a number of hitchhikers coming in on commercial ships, cruise ships, recreational yachts, and they're getting transported all around the world.
So what are these hitchhikers? Are they mainly, I mean, the first thing that springs to my mind would be rats, but there must be more than that.
It's mainly things that are living on the outside of the boat, so a lot of different kinds of seaweeds. We have invasive oysters getting shipped around, mussels, crabs, all the little kind of invertebrate critters.
So these things attach themselves to vessels somewhere in the world. The vessels make their way to Sydney Harbour, dock, I should say, and these things can be transplanted.
Exactly. So sometimes the conditions won't be right for them. Maybe it's too hot, too cold, too salty, but sometimes it will be, and then they can make the jump from the ship onto some of our boating infrastructure.
I guess in the modern world that's a big problem, but in times past, occasionally things would float into harbours in other countries on coconuts, classically, I think.
I think in the past we would have had a lot of species moving around, but just not as far. With the ships, we can travel a lot further across the oceans, so can the hitchhikers.
I like that idea, little crustaceans hitchhiking their way around. And what are some of the more pressing problems that these things cause?
We haven't actually got many terrible invaders in Sydney, but certainly down in Melbourne. It's quite heavily invaded, Port Phillip Bay, and they have some fan worms, really beautiful, but they tend to smother some of the native things that would grow across the sandy bottoms and up the pilings and rocky reefs.
And where have they travelled from, these worms?
Most of them tend to come from places in Asia, places with similar kinds of marine environmental systems to us, so a similar kind of temperature.
There you are, folks. There's something to look out for next time you're in a harbour, in a big city. Watch out for those hitchhikers. And can we find what you do online anywhere?
Certainly on the Macquarie website, and I have a personal website as well, katherinedafforn.com.
Well, all the best, and I hope you don't come across too many hitchhikers.
Thank you very much.
Well, there's so many people here now, folks. All the tables are engaged. And you, ma'am, you've come along and you hope to meet a scientist.
I hope to meet a scientist, yes. I'm very excited to talk to some of the neuroscientists or even some of the marine biologists. And, yeah, everyone looks like they're having a really good time. So
it's a good sign because every table is now full.
It is, yeah.
Oh,
it really is.
An astronomer has presented himself. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Wow, this room is never-ending with scientists, folks. I'm found myself at another table. I've been drawn to this table because there's a sign saying, "The hidden world in your gut." And this young lady is going to tell me about the hidden world in my gut. Who do we have here?
Hi, my name is Alison.
And tell me about my gut.
All right, so when you first think of microbes, what is the first thing that comes into your mind?
Oh, test tubes. Oh, microbes. Oh, good question. I don't know what the first thing that comes into my mind. What should be?
All right, so your answer is actually pretty good because I was expecting, disease and devastation and, sanitizing everything. So then I actually want to bring people away from that because the majority of microbes in this world are actually not bad for you, so then they don't cause disease. And then so if you think of all the different microbes, they live in the water, they live in the soil, they live in the air even, and they even live on you. So on your body and inside your body, there are actually tons of microbes. And if you want to take a...
And we just have a look here at your little presentation.
Yeah, so...
Oh, it says we are part microbes.
Yes.
All of us, yeah.
Yep, so I have a few fun facts.
Okay.
All right, so did you know you are actually only about 50% human?
Oh, many people have told me that. Many people have said that to me.
All right, so one of the reasons is actually because you have a lot of microbes inside you, particularly inside your mouth and inside your guts. There are lots and lots of microbes, and then they're actually really good for you. So they do a lot of beneficial things for you, like producing vitamins. They help you digest your food, and without your microbes, you will be really sick and you probably cannot survive.
Yeah, really. I mean, they are necessary for life, aren't they? That's the bottom line.
Yes, definitely. And so if you're only thinking about the sort of how many microbial cells to human cells in your body, that's about half-half. But if you think about the DNA, so that's the genetic code of life, you are actually less than 1% human.
Oh, what? Oh, tell me more.
All right, so basically we took all the DNA within all your human cells, and then you took all the DNA within your microbial cells. You have lots more microbial DNA than you have human DNA. So if you think about it, maybe you're actually being controlled by your microbes, and you're just a bag that's carrying your microbes around.
Yeah, especially at dinner time. I think my microbes control me. They tell me it's time to eat. I think, wow, I had no idea. That's absolutely fascinating. And this is one of the reasons I love coming to these Meet a Scientist night. You never know what you're going to find out. And what, in your research, what's something that has really surprised you?
Okay, so in my research, I look at how the diet affects our microbes, and then how we can use diet to try and make ourselves healthier. So one of my favorite parts, and actually one of my questions here, was how to turn poo into abstract art. All right, so that's actually better than it sounds. So one of the fun parts of my research is I get to play with a lot of feces. So I get poo samples from different people, and then what we do is actually we want to look at the microbes inside, and we extract DNA from it, and then afterwards we, for example, want to look at how the microbes change over time. You guys can't see this, but then I will...
Yes, we're looking at another interesting chart here of what might be in your feces.
Right, so then basically what you can get from your fecal sample is a chart that is very colorful, and it shows how different groups of microbes change over time. So your microbes in your gut will be affected by your lifestyle, they'll be affected by what you eat, whether you do exercise or not, or whether you eat antibiotics. So everything you do in your life can change your microbes, and then for example, if you eat broccoli one day and then some microbes really like that, then they will increase in abundance.
Again, it's just one of the things about the Speed Meter Scientist Night. The variety of what you learn and who you meet is just staggering. Well, I don't know how to wish you luck with what you do. It is very interesting work, and I'm sure very necessary work. I hope you have a great night here tonight, and I hope lots of people come up to find out about their gut.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much.
Hello, excuse me, can I have a quick chat to you? Yeah. I've noticed you were just having a speed meet with a scientist. How did that go?
I actually had speed meets with 4 different scientists.
4? You have been busy.
I've been very busy. It's been a great, interesting night. I just wanted to branch out into other scientific fields. I mean, sure, I talked to a couple of neuroscientists because that's the area of science I actually work in. But now talking to a biologist about DNA barcoding and termite breeding program, that's been quite interesting. As well as speaking to a marine biologist in relation to our cruise ships coming into Sydney Harbour and the algae and shipworms, all that come in and affect our Sydney Harbour to some degree. And she's now working on a project that is keeping Sydney Harbour clean, and by having rock oysters in there, and then also finding a home for them once they've done their job.
This night is not just for the public, which is great that the public are here,
yeah, of course,
but for other scientists such as yourself to come along and speed meet other scientists. That's a wonderful opportunity.
Yes, yeah, definitely so. And I'm also doing a bit of computer science at the moment too, learning to code, program computers. So if you've got that scientific mind, it's great to chat to other scientists because you just know what's out there really. Because if you're focused on your specialty, you don't know what other specialties are up to because science is so complex. You've got so many different areas of science. Biology, chemistry, physics, neuroscience, anatomy, astronomy, astrology, the list goes on, right?
It certainly does. And again, I'm so pleased you've come along here tonight to take advantage of this opportunity.
Yeah, I'm just grateful that the Powerhouse Museum, or I should say now the Museum of Arts and Sciences, has enabled this to happen. Just as something new that gets you out of the everyday routine, and it's it's quite reviving, actually.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I suppose now you're off to meet a few more.
Yeah, a few more, and otherwise just keep browsing this science festival for Sydney Science at the moment.
Thank you very much.
You have a good night. Thanks.
That was part 2 of Speed Meet the Scientists. Join us next week for the final part, part 3.
Hi, I'm Sue Blackmore. I'm a visiting professor in psychology at the University of Plymouth in England, and I'm really looking forward to coming to Skepticon 2018 in October. I'll be talking about my new book, Seeing Myself, The New Science of Out-of-Body Experiences. And this is really the reason that I ever got drawn into skepticism in the first place, because I had this incredible experience and I couldn't understand it. So I was determined to become a parapsychologist, and I did my PhD in parapsychology, did loads of experiments on ESP and telepathy and all these kinds of things. And, well, then the evidence made me change my mind. I joined PsyCop and got involved in all the skeptical movements of those days for a couple of decades. So, things were very different in those days, and I'm looking forward very much indeed to finding out a bit more about modern skepticism on the other side of the world. And I hope that you will enjoy hearing the new science of out-of-body experiences. The neuroscience is fantastic, and we can now understand just why and how it is that so many people are convinced that they've gone out of their body when they're really still inside. Ooh, hang on a minute. They're not really inside, are they? I mean, there's not a soul or a spirit or even really a conscious self in that. Well, that's some of the very interesting things I hope we'll all be discussing in October. And I hope to see you there.
Meet Professor Susan Blackmore at this year's Skepticon, the Australian Skeptics National Convention. October the 13th and the 14th, the Concourse, Chatswood. Tickets at convention.skeptics.com.au. Skeptics Award for Critical Thinking in Journalism, nominations open. And this comes to us from the Australian Skeptics website, skeptics.com.au, written by Tim Mendham, published on the 20th of August 2018. Australian Skeptics Inc. is adding to its portfolio of annual awards with one for the best piece of skeptical journalism. The award is named after the late Barry Williams, past president and executive officer of Australian Skeptics Inc., who was a regular on Australian media. The Barry Williams Award for Skeptical Journalism will recognise the best piece of journalism, in any medium, that takes a critical and skeptical approach to a topic that falls within our remit, which is the scientific investigation of pseudoscience and the paranormal. The award is nicknamed the Wallaby, in memory of Sir Jim R. Wallaby, the regular nom de plume Barry used for his more whimsical editorial pieces. It will be awarded annually with a citation and $2,000 prize. A panel made up out of experienced journalists across differing media has been put together to review entries. Tim Mendham, Executive Officer of Australian Skeptics Inc. and editor of The Skeptic, said, quote, "We have given a similar award a few times in the past, though the most recent was way back in 2010. We're now calling for nominations for the Wallaby from skeptics, the public and the media. Journalists can nominate their own work. It would nominally be given for one piece or a series used in print, TV, radio or online, produced in Australia and published or broadcast during 2018, end quote. Nominations should be sent to the editor of The Skeptic at editor@skeptics.com.au or send hard copies to the Australian Skeptics, PO Box 20, Beecroft, New South Wales, 2119. And I will link to this page in the show notes if you want to have a closer look at those addresses. Tim said that the key issue would be the nature of a, quote, skeptical, end quote, piece of journalism. Quote, should it take a debunking stance or a more general critical thinking approach? Personally, I would prefer the second. The piece takes a critical investigation approach to the topic, though I must admit I have concerns if a piece came down in favour of the outer fringes of woo. My view is that we should certainly not be rewarding a puff piece for either side of the argument. Serious journalism only need apply, end quote. The Wallaby will complement the Skeptics' other awards, which include the Bent Spoon Award, which goes to the most preposterous piece of paranormal or pseudoscientific piffle, as well as the more positive Skeptic of the Year Award and the Thornett Award for the promotion of reason. The latter goes to a member of the public who may not have anything to do with the skeptical movement. The prize amount for the Thornett Award, previously set at $1,000, will be raised to $2,000 in line with the media prize. The recipients of these awards are traditionally announced at the gala dinner at our annual convention, which this year will be held on October the 13th. So there you are, there's the clue and the hint. Any journalists out there, if you know any journalists, there is a prize in the offing, $2,000, details at skeptics.com.au, or just click the links in this week's show notes.
Hi, I'm Darren McKee, one of the hosts of The Reality Check. Each week, my co-host and I explore a range of controversies and curiosities using science and critical thinking. You can find us on iTunes, your favorite podcasting platform, and on Facebook by searching for The Reality Check, or by following us on Twitter at @TRC_podcast. Until then, keep an open mind, but not so open your brain falls out.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
I know you know me, people. I like to seek out those reptiles, and of course, reptiles around this time of year really like their handlers. Who have we got here again?
Anthony, and this is Joanna.
Great to talk to Joanna. Is that Joanna the Goanna?
It might be.
Which is a great name. And
I'm good at original names.
And of course, as I was mentioning, around this time of year, you're a very popular handler because you're the warmest thing around, aren't you?
That's precisely why it loves me.
So would you be hotter than a rock that she'd like to normally sit on? Is human body temperature nice for them?
About right.
And also, I remember you told me once about how to tell when a reptile is nervous or not happy. So she's just sort of sitting there making little flailing movements with the front legs. Is that a comfy thing or not?
Yeah, it's just trying to get hold. Just wants to feel secure, so it's getting its claws into its best comfortable spot. So, yeah.
Now, around about this time of year in Australia, would they be about to have a few eggs or carrying any eggs in them? When's their breeding and when's it happen? Yeah,
very soon. The boys, when the weather warms up a little bit more, the boys will be out looking for girls, and the girls will be looking for food. And if they get enough food, then they'll ovulate.
Oh, right, okay.
And then the boys will be really looking for them. Oh. We're pretty sure that there'd be a fertility pheromone going on. Yeah.
Okay. And do the females choose the males, or the males just sort of very forceful? How's it work in the goanna world?
The males will choose any female, but if she's not,
that's the same then, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. But because the males are much bigger.
Oh, I see. Right.
And the males will fight for that opportunity. The biggest and toughest males might get the chance to mate.
It looks like Joanna's giving you a bit of a kiss in the ear there. What's going on with the tongue?
It's just smelling the air, just constantly sniffing with their tongue. So it's just smelling. That's all it's doing, just checking for whatever it can identify by smell.
And what's the one question kids always ask you? What's the one thing they want to know?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, because they're always coming up, they're really interested, but there must be one thing that one misconception they've got from something.
Oh, I just worked out the question, and it's a really depressing question for me as a scientist. They ask me, is it real? I know, and I'm baffled by that question because of course it's real. There's a few just basic questions I'll ask.
And actually, Joanna is a female, obviously. Would a male sit there as calmly as that, or they're a bit more wacky?
Yeah, but again, it's just a conditioning process. These are like, I call them flagship animals, and it takes a lot of conditioning to get them used to people, noise, etc., so they can then be used as mascots for their species or their habitats or whatever messages we might have for an audience. Yeah.
Have a great time here at the museum tonight, and thank you for sharing your reptiles. I'll see you around for sure.
Anytime,
Bye-bye.
for sure. Likewise.
Thank you. Just a fashion tip for you scientists out there. From where I'm standing, I can see 4 women wearing MC Hammer pants. So MC Hammer pants are probably big in the scientific field. I don't know why. It's comfy, it's winter, it's hip, it's happening, it's now. So that's the hot tip for scientists. So if you're a guy, get into the MC Hammer pants, because the guys haven't picked up on it yet, people. Oh, look, I've just been talking to some people, and who have we got here?
I'm Jess, and this is Mel.
And what is the show you're doing for Science Week?
So we're Street Science. We've come down from Brisbane, and essentially we're going to be blowing stuff up on stage, getting the kids excited, and, having a whole bunch of fun.
Okay, hydrogen peroxide, 90%, like Warner von Braun, rocket fuel, bang, match.
We don't waste our time trying to set hydrogen peroxide on fire.
Oh, okay,
It's more butane, the real good stuff.
Oh, the stuff that goes straight away, no mucking about. And what seems to excite the kids most? Are they, they kind of like, ooh, scared, or are they like, yeah, bang, bang?
I reckon the liquid nitrogen, they're not scared of, but very,
they
very
should
excited
be.
By. They could be, but not with us. We're professionals.
Wow, okay. So what's your favourite thing you freeze?
Poor rubber duckies don't really stand much of a chance.
And then you hit it with a hammer?
No, you just drop it on the floor, that's enough.
As simple as that. Wow, that is great.
I don't think the duckies enjoy it as much as we do, though.
Wow. And what have you got your degrees in?
I have an undergraduate degree in secondary education, and I'm currently doing a PhD in education.
And what's your background?
I'm originally a research scientist, a botanist and geneticist, and I did my graduate diploma in education as well.
That's the third botanist. The third botanist I have met tonight. Okay, what's your favourite plant and why?
Duranta repens, common name geisha girl. It's a very common ornamental around Queensland, and it's actually in my mum's back garden.
Is it a native?
No, it's not actually. It's
it's one of those 50s plants that our parents like.
Yeah, they're planted everywhere.
What colour is it?
So pretty. It's got beautiful little purple leaves. Geisha girl, based off the Japanese geisha. Very pretty, very ornate.
Oh, well, I like the cotton Easter, which, of course, is all around my place in Newcastle. My mum put them there. It's a 50s thing as well. They're like little cherry things. Totally not native at all. They look stupid in Australia, but they go with 50s bricks.
We're making good use of the tipuana, or the rosewood, which has those beautiful helicopter seeds.
Oh, yeah.
So if you've ever grabbed those seeds, throw them up into the air, they fly on their way down. We're using them for our new National Science Week show in Brizzy as well.
Oh, now, of course, everybody has something that they want to do in their show that they haven't quite got the budget for, or is it just a bit too dangerous? What's the next thing you'd like to put into your show that, like, I don't want you to give too much away, but yeah, because there's stuff that you want to do, but you can't always do it in front of kids for insurance reasons. I mean, obviously you'd like to fire a gun. I mean, who wouldn't? But, teach them how a bazooka works, but indoors that doesn't go so well.
Your favourite experiment is the elephant's toothpaste.
My favourite experiment is the elephant's toothpaste. An extra large elephant's toothpaste could be very, very awesome.
Like a couple of metres high.
Oh, that could be awesome, yeah.
Hang on, is that Indian toothpaste that has no fluoride in it? What do you mean?
Well, elephant's toothpaste is a reaction that catalyses and sort of explodes out of a beautiful flask way up into the air.
Cool.
Yes.
And at the moment, it's not on the spit too much.
Well, it is, but on a smaller scale. I would like to make it extra, extra large.
We've got them jumping maybe up to 80 centimetres out of a flask, but if you could upsize it, you could get it, a metre and a half, 2 metres?
Metre and a half, too.
Oh, wow.
So good.
Where can people find you guys online to find out where you're doing shows in Sydney and Brisbane in the future?
We're streetscience.com.au, but of course Facebook is where everything's at, so look for Street Science on Facebook. We're very proud to be down from Brisbane for Sydney Science Festival. It's going to be an absolute blast. Excuse the pun.
Happy Science Week. Boom, boom.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Kiran. I'm a doctor of medicine. I'm a pharmacologist. I'm doing PhD from University of Technology, Sydney, with 2 scholarships from Australian government. And I would like to say something about how innovation and new things, they can change the world, and how new people should come into this thing towards science, because science is the thing that can lead this world towards the next step, and this world can live more life. because otherwise there is a destruction. But if we will focus on science and we will do work on daily basis, we will do critical thinking, there would be the life for this world will increase. So we should focus on knowledge, not on the repetition or a bigger thing or a more money-making thing. Focus on real science and real knowledge.
Oh, look, we've discovered one of the hidden fans, one of the people who is actually at the Madame Frou Frou Cafe when Richard and I are there, or sometimes Tim and I are there. So have you seen Tim and I chatting in the corner at the Madame Frou Frou, have you?
I have.
So you can tell people the whole Bunga Bunga recording and the whole thing of me and Richard, it's real.
Delicious coffee, poached eggs, smashed avo, the whole Inner West experience, you know, it's great.
And what do you think's different about Science Week this year? What's the exciting thing this year?
There seems to be a buzz. I think a lot of media recently has focused on things like the drought in Australia, the plastic bag ban. People are becoming a lot more aware of the problems facing us, and that seems to be reflecting here.
Look, and what's your specialty in science?
My specialty is microbiomes. So my background is marine microbiomes and then soil, but now I do a lot of human microbiomes. So,
And as a bacteriologist, what's your favourite bacteria? You must have a favourite one.
My favourite bacteria is Helicobacter pylori.
The gut bug?
Yes, the stomach ulcer.
The one that people thought didn't really exist for a while.
Yeah, and the reason that's my favourite, not only because I've been infected by it...
Oh, my dad just goes on about it all the bloody time.
It bloody burns like you would not believe. Yeah. But it's a great story in Australian science because we actually won a Nobel Prize because the researcher... No one believed, everyone thought stomach ulcers were caused by stress. So he grew this in a bottle and drank it and gave himself a stomach ulcer and hence demonstrated that this is what causes it. So it's a great bacteria. It's a great example of how bacteria manipulate the world around them.
Thank you very much for your time. So where can we catch you online to have a debate or discussion with you?
You can catch me at Thomas_Jeffries on Twitter or at Western Sydney University, or on at jams.org.au, which is our Sydney and now national, as of a few weeks ago, Microbiology Society.
You'll have a huge science week, so may all your bacteria have an external coating.
Thank you.
Pleased to meet you. We have Ruben the surfing scientist, also named after a sandwich. Well done. Now, as a surfing scientist, I'll get the highly controversial question out of the way first. What is the best way to get yourself out of a rip if you're in one? What's your opinion?
You swim parallel to the beach and soon enough you will get washed into the shore. It's a very narrow little current, and then if you try and swim against that, you're stuffed. But if you swim at 90 degrees to the rip, you'll soon get washed straight back to shore.
Now what about just floating there and being carried around? Does that work as well?
Yes, you could float, but if it's a mega rip,
it could be a long journey.
It might take a while.
Of course, we're coming up to, I think, the anniversary of the movie Jaws. And like people go, this thing, and occasionally a surfer someone will have a go at him. But it's not really, on a day-to-day level, a problem at all, is it?
It's the furthest thing from a problem that it could be. However, I know the statistics quite well, how unlikely it is that I will get bitten by a shark. However, if I'm out at dusk and I'm the last person out, I will literally walk on water to get to shore. The fear that overcomes me, I can't explain how terrified I get.
Yeah, because that's when they're in their feeding cycle. Once is that what it is, or is it the fact the water's dark and you can't see?
Oh, look, there's so many theories about this, and it is. We do know that you probably shouldn't surf at dusk or dawn, but I've surfed so many times at dusk or dawn. It's not like at dusk or dawn, if you threw a piece of meat in the water, it would boil with shark activity. So it's not like the risk is outrageous. But what happens to me is this human instinct. There's a circuit in my brain that's very primitive, and I can't wait to get out of the water. But if there was just one other surfer out there, that goes away. It evaporates.
Okay, cool.
So, it's primitive stuff.
And where can we see you online and see what you got up to and what you're doing, and what do you shoot videos about usually?
Well, the latest thing that you'll see is I've just filmed some stuff for Kids WB on Channel 9, 9 Go. Kids WB is Warner Brothers, and it's the cartoons that they play on Channel 9. And in between those cartoons, I come on and I do little science experiments.
And what's an example of one of you? Did you like put some like C4 explosive inside someone's lunchbox or something like that?
Yeah. We built a nuclear bomb and we exploded it. No.
It's about time someone did some work with thorium in Australia. We've been lagging.
We've been really slack.
Yeah.
Kids' TV is just not dangerous enough anymore. No, what we did do some fun stuff, though. I made oxygen using hydrogen peroxide and ordinary bleach.
Okay.
And you make enough oxygen to relight a glowing splint. Now, I found that little experiment in the Journal of Chemical Education. And unfortunately, on Kids WB, I didn't get time to cite that paper. But Journal of Chemical Education, what a wonderful, wonderful journal.
Now, I'm just thinking hydrogen peroxide and bleach, that's getting very close to V2 rocket fuel.
Actually, I don't know what was V2 rocket fuel. Was it H2O2, was it?
Well, yeah, they had it divided up. Yeah, but hydrogen peroxide was one of the ones, and they added something to it, and up they went.
Yeah, right. Because the jet rocket fuel...
Because when you see a V2 fall over and busts, and there's about 2 seconds, and then suddenly both containers break and mix, kaboomo! And one of those containers that's going up is, in fact, hydrogen peroxide.
Well... That makes sense, because if you've got 90% hydrogen peroxide and you chuck some catalyst in it, it decomposes to oxygen and water, and the oxygen is a gas and it expands rapidly, and you can jet propel yourself with that. I was only using 3% hydrogen peroxide. You can buy it from Woolies, Coles.
That's right. Warner von Braun. That's right. He went to the supermarket. It didn't work. He said, no, we need the stronger stuff.
Yeah.
He's Scottish accent, yeah. Okay, right. So only 3%, of course, because all chemicals aren't the same. Hydrogen peroxide comes in different strengths.
That's right. And if you're a science nerd and you want to try this, it's really great. It's not my idea. H2O2. Go to Coles or Woolies, buy the 3% stuff.
Put some goggles on, hey?
Yeah, you probably should. But if you're doing this in an Erlenmeyer flask and you just put a little bit of ordinary household bleach, mix just a splash, you'll see a lot of fizzing, and every bubble is full of pure oxygen, and you can use that oxygen to show kids that, for instance, if you light a splint and blow it out, the glowing splint will reignite in that oxygen, and it's like magic.
Right. And where can we find you online again to have a look at your videos and things?
abc.net.au/science/surfing scientist.
Yay! Ruben the Surfing Scientist, thanks for talking to us, and have a great Science Week.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. On next week's show, Speed Meet the Scientists, Part 3. Even more scientists meet, and tall stories of shipwrecks. That's an interesting one. Something to look forward to next week. Also, our reporter Kevin Davies brings us an interview about how Star Wars can be used in military tactics. That's an unusual one, but interesting. I catch up with the challenge coordinator and investigator from Australian Skeptics, Ian Bryce, who's going to be giving us the latest on the Higgs boson. It's still going, I think. We don't hear much about it anymore. We might soon find out next week. Our new reporter, and this is exciting, our new reporter Michelle Franklin from the Northern Territory is going to be telling us about Maggie the Moggy. But our special interview next week will be with Associate Adjunct Professor, something like that, Professor Paul Willis, a long-time friend of the Skeptic Zone. Paul is based in Adelaide, and he's going to be commenting on a recent report about the decline in belief in creationism amongst university students. Not surprising after all these years that belief in creationism would be declining. It's something we just don't hear much about anymore, although it's still there. It's still there. So lots to look forward to on the next episode, but for now, this is Richard Saunders, signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes, going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter @Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.